This is Jerry, but okay. Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to today's Tuesday, April 18th, 2023 Public Safety and Human Services Committee of the Whole meeting. Joining us this afternoon are Council Members Carson, Kahn, Forsyth, Stewart, and Kritzer, and myself, Presiding Officer Jerry Anderson. Today we have 4 items on our agenda, and at the end of the meeting for the 4th item, I will be excusing myself, and Ms. Stewart will be leading the meeting, just so everybody here knows that in advance. And our first item today is with the Police Department. It is the approval of contract modification with Axon Enterprise, Inc., and this will be for Chief Lowe.
Good afternoon, Council. What you have before you is a request for a modification/extension of our contract with Axon. Axon is the service provider for our body-worn and in-car cameras. Once the in-car cameras were installed, there were some technology issues that caused us to deem that system unreliable. There were both connectivity and uploading issues. We've worked with the vendor over the last year and a half to try and come up with a resolution for that existing platform. Unfortunately, we were unable to do so. As a result, an agreement was reached with Axon to modify this contract, taking it through 2027. The original contract was 21 to 25. The extension modification is coming at no additional cost to us, and then they will come out and provide us with the newest platform for their in-car cameras, which have been tested and deemed reliable. Additionally, we will have 2 additional vehicles uploaded with in-car cameras that were not included in the original scope of work, and those those upfittings will occur at a nominal cost of approximately $2,000 total for both of those vehicles. We're asking that this be moved to consent for tonight. And the reason for the urgency on it is that Axon has approximately a 10-month lag or lead time for installation. So if we're not able to move forward with it, we will, I'll say, be stuck with the unreliable equipment until sometime late next year based on their install schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the council? We had a hard time hearing you here in chambers, just so if anybody needs anything repeated, let me know. Ms. Kritzer.
Well, thank you for the update, Chief Lowe. I think, while it's disappointing that the initial equipment we got didn't work quite well, it's great to hear actually that we were testing it and looking at, you know, how it's working for us and giving that feedback, and that they had the flexibility to say, let's get you better equipment. It sounds like at no additional cost. So, and just to clarify on that, so you're saying there's nominal cost because we're adding two in-car equipment that we hadn't initially have, but all the other ones are being replaced for free. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. They will swap out all of the existing installs, and then they will add 2 additional vehicles that were not part of the original scope of work at the cost of about $1,000 per vehicle, which is a substantial discount on the normal upfitting cost typically.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, I'm supportive of us doing this to be able to get working equipment. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Kritzer. Ms. Stewart.
Thank you, Chief, and thanks for the heads up on the scheduling on this. I was just curious if this was something that our department alone experienced. We know that this vendor has taken on, it has grown significantly. Their company has grown significantly in the last few years. Is this something that other departments experienced as well? Do we have a sense of that trend?
Yeah, so many departments did not go with the in-car camera option as well. We opted for both. So the departments that do have the in-car cameras, to my knowledge, they have not had similar problems. So I don't know, at least in the area, of other departments have had that problem. But you are right, this particular company/manufacturer has grown exponentially over the last, 5-10 years or so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Ms. Forsyth.
Thank you. Thanks for the explanation on this one. I would just ask if you could potentially relay back to them. I noticed on the quote that we were given, it was issued on the 14th and expiration is on the 24th. So some feedback for them would be to city government moves slowly and we are able to move quickly, and maybe they would like to reconsider. A 10-day quote is not the business practice that I'm used to. So hopefully that could be some feedback we could give to them to make it so that other governments actually have time to get this stuff looked at and turned around.
Oh, understood. Well, we will share that with our representative.
Thank you, Ms. Forsyth. Any other questions? Everybody okay with this being on consent tonight? Awesome. I got all thumbs up for you here, sir. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move on to item number 2, which is amendments to the Redmond Fire Fee Schedule. And 3 also is by the same folks, Fire Marshal Todd Short and Rich Gieske are joining us. Take it away, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, everybody. So what we're bringing forward to you today, looking for approval to move to consent on May 16th. Thank you. Is 2 routine pieces of business. We are proposing amendments to the Redmond Fire Code and the associated amendments to the existing Redmond Fire Fee Schedule. So this will bring us into alignment with the new state fire code that's coming online in July 1st of this year. So typically every 3 years, we do a regular code amendment update process to accommodate new technologies, new systems, new issues that are identified through the national code, consensus code process, and then the state legislature and how they want to adopt that code. So that's what we're bringing forward to you today for approval to consent.
Thank you for the brief update. Any questions on this item? Ms. Stewart?
So it looked to me, these are 2 separate items, actually. So the
Correct.
fee schedule, you're looking to move to consent on the 16th. And then we have a study session on the fire code itself on the 25th. Is that correct?
That's a placeholder if needed, if requested by you.
Oh, I see. That would have
Yeah.
changed how I,
So let's take first item, fee schedule.
okay.
Any questions on the fee schedule? Great. Ms. Forsyth? Thank you, Ms. Stewart, for pointing that out.
Thank you. So I noticed that there's some question marks around one of the resolution numbers. Is that a placeholder for the current one that we're actively using to go
Yes.
in there? Okay.
Yes, and I've updated those this afternoon, so those have been changed for the next round of review. I apologize for that.
That was my only question. Thanks.
Ms. Kritzer?
I noticed in the fee schedules that there was a lot of updates around energy storage systems, lithium batteries, et cetera. Can you speak a little bit more to some of those changes and the corresponding policy changes?
Definitely. So in the model fire code, in the International Fire Code, the 2021 edition, which is what we're looking to move towards as is the state, when new technologies and new things come into the code, oftentimes we see those move quite a bit in the first couple code cycles that they're in. So a lot of the stuff that is covered under the energy storage system kind of definition or umbrella, in the previous edition, the 2018, was covered under a thing called battery systems or capacity energy storage systems. And so they've kind of revamped how they think about those kinds of systems, and they've kind of renamed them all. So the permits that for both the installation and the ongoing operation of those types of systems have been retitled basically in the code. So the deletions of the battery systems and the capacitor energy storage systems and the addition of the basic energy storage system permit is to reflect the changes from the base code.
Interesting. Yeah, I appreciate that extra context. And thinking about, I think the last time that we had our fire and loss, save and loss report, there was an issue around battery storage situation. And I recently was on the Public Issues Committee call with the other cities in King County, and there was some discussion around this particular topic and how other cities are dealing with increased kind of mass battery storage types of businesses.
There's a lot of conversation in the fire service and in the code service right now on energy and battery systems, EVs, mobility devices, all that. So there's a lot of new code in both the state fire code and the national fire code on those items. And we're still, as an industry, trying to figure out how do we adjust to that. We're seeing an increase in fires related to those from improper use, improper charging, and they're bringing just a whole new set of challenges to the fire service of what do we do with those vehicles when they do catch fire, and how do we safeguard buildings and structures and people with those. So there's a lot of active communication and code development and processes being developed currently with that. So
I appreciate the attention on it, and I imagine it'll evolve a little more in the future.
lots of moving parts.
Great. Any other questions from the council? Mr. Carson, go for it.
Thank you. So I noticed that, so B and D are titled this, in our memo, or in the ordinance, I guess, they're titled the same.
Yep.
So can you explain
Most
why
definitely.
we have two that are identically named?
So they're referring to two different sections of the fee schedule. So item B is referring to table G1 in the fire fee schedule.
Right, and H.
And then the other is table H. So one is a fire installation permit and one is an operational permit.
I see, okay.
So some things we look at during the construction process to make sure they're properly constructed and properly installed.
Got
And
it.
the other is to make sure that we have that ongoing annual look through our FLS inspection program to make sure that they're staying code compliant over the life of the system.
And is this a one, so in the case of the operational one, is that a one-time fee or is that a yearly fee?
It's an annual inspection fee, correct?
Okay.
So that's a specialized inspection for that particular use.
So can you explain what kind of applications we might see that sort of system in?
So in Chapter 12 of the 2021 Fire Code, there's a table in there that talks about the type of battery system. So whether it's a lithium ion or it's a lead acid battery system or a nickel cadmium battery, there's a bunch
Nickel
of
metal
battery
hydride
types.
or whatever,
Exactly.
right.
And so they have different thresholds for when the permit applies based on the relative risk of that system. So typically what we've seen in the past is lead acid battery systems, and we've typically regulated that at 50 gallons of electrolyte capacity, but lithium ions don't have electrolyte. So the equivalent to that is 70 kilowatt hours. So it's quite a large battery installation.
Okay.
So
An example, I'm just trying to understand what an example of an installation like that would be.
it would be
Commercial, would it? I mean, typically?
pure commercial.
Purely commercial, okay.
Yeah, a residential system. Some of the Tesla walls are typically about 20 kilowatts.
Okay, so I'm just getting some sense of what we're talking about. 'Cause-
Large data room UPS systems.
Got it, okay, great, terrific, thank you.
Other questions? Ms. Stewart?
So a lot of synergy with my colleagues here tonight. I guess we all noticed the batteries. But I would ask, in general, were there any other hot topics as you all considered the adoption of the new code? Anything in particular that may be a challenge to implement here in Redmond that you all are feeling a challenge on that we should be aware of?
There are a couple issues in the code piece of it, but in the fee schedule, no.
So sorry. I will bring that question back on item number 3. I am so sorry.
At the bit for that.
No, you're good. It's a large document on the code.
Excellent. Thank you for the questions, council. I have a question for you on this, and this is also related to the second item as well, but do we use only IFC here in Redmond, or do we also use other standards like the National Fire Protection Association standard that would influence how we set our fees?
We do. So in the in Chapter 80 of the International Fire Code, there's a reference publications section, and so the Fire Code typically tells you what you need to do, and then it refers to an NFPA standard, National Fire Protection Association standard, specific to the topic we're talking about. And so that's the how do you do it. So yes, you need to put fire sprinklers in your house. You go to NFPA to say how do you do that. NFPA 130 for light rail, all that stuff. So yeah, there's a whole list of NFPA standards that are adopted by reference in both the state and the national fire codes.
Fantastic. And then similar, on that same level, when there's an update to an NFPA standard, what's the time frame for updating the IFC that we would see here in Redmond?
The IFC specifies a specific year or publish or the addition of the NFPA standards. Okay. So that's what becomes in effect for that 3-year period.
Excellent. Thank you. Other questions from the council? How are we feeling about this item for consent on the 16th? Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
We're good on this. Number 2, the next item on our agenda is amendments to the Redmond Fire Code. And again, if you'd like to reintroduce this item or maybe restate the question into the council that you have for us today, that would be helpful.
Fantastic. So this is the, you should have two documents in your package. One is an executive summary of the 40-some-odd page document of our 1506 of the Redmond Municipal Code. And this is modifying the existing Redmond Municipal Code to accommodate the changes in the state fire code. So we have our local Redmond Fire Code, as well as amending a couple of other sections of the fire code section of the municipal code. And we are looking for this to go to consent on the 16th of May.
And is the question, should we do a study session?
Yes.
Okay. How do you all feel about consent? Ms. Stewart has some questions, by the way.
Be glad to answer all the questions you have.
I'm going to call on Ms. Stewart first because she's been waiting, so.
I'm happy to see this item go to consent, first of all. And I just peeked ahead at the extended agenda. We do have two other meaty topics that night on the 25th, so I think it does behoove us probably to take care of business if we can. Yeah, my original question, again, when we read through this, it's clear that a lot of us caught the topic of batteries. I guess I'm looking for the subhead. There's a lot of line edits because we are simply updating the code, but there are some meatier pieces in there. So what else was a hot topic as you all considered including the latest code into our local municipal code here?
Yeah, we tried to identify some of those larger issues that we thought were a little more of interest in the executive summary. One of the big ones is the mobile fueling, which is kind of a new thing in the code. Came into the code this last cycle. Many of our surrounding jurisdictions prohibited mobile fueling just outright, and I missed the signs, and so we did not prohibit it directly, and we are looking to prohibit it here in the city, mostly because of our aquifer recharge zone. Trying to permit both the vehicle and the location is very problematic for enforcement of that, and the risk of the aquifer of having a fuel spill in a parking lot or on the groundwater would be significant. So we're proposing to prohibit that outright. The other issue that is out there that I think is actually a very good thing is we've had a lot of internal conversation about residential fire sprinklers and ADUs. Typically, if you have a single family, obviously all new residential, so either single family houses or ADUs get fire sprinkled just out of our existing code, which has been, I think, as you've seen in the Save Loss, is a very effective way to protect property and lives. One of the things that we've been battling with is when people want to do attached ADUs, how do we deal with that with the existing house? And so we had some existing language in the municipal code that's been there for many years that said if you build a structure either attached to or within 10 feet of your house, we'd aggregate the square footage. And the intent of that was really more for commercial structures to basically close a loophole so people couldn't get out of fire sprinkling in their commercial buildings. And we've been applying that to single-family residential. So we've changed that language so that now that 10-foot separation only applies to commercial structures. And what that does is it allows somebody to build a detached ADU. They only sprinkler their ADU. If they want to attach it or build it within an existing dwelling, they'll sprinkle the ADU portion, and then we'll give them the opportunity to either segregate that with fire separation per the residential code, or sprinkle the main residence, where before they didn't have the option of the separation. So I think that's going to be a good thing for that middle housing piece.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Forsyth.
Thank you. So if I hear this correctly, the battery component that we're all very interested in is mostly for commercial properties. Is that correct?
Correct.
Great. And then I know there is a local resident who's going to be very excited about that DADU code change, because I know that was a big issue for someone that we had write into us for ombuds about trying to get a shed built in their property, and they were going to have to sprinkler a shed.
Yeah.
So good change.
Yeah, and in that case, if you have a shed, if you have a utility shed that you want to build, if you build it right next to your house, and as long as it's a separate structure, then yeah, we would not be aggregating that square footage.
Great.
And then the ADU is a little bit different, but.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Also was excited to read the language around landscape rooftops, and I'm hoping this means that people will start doing that. If you build it, they will come kind of situation. So I was really happy about that. I just wanted to check in on the fire sprinkler modification that we made in 2020, sprinklers that go and get installed after a fire in the rebuilds. that's still good? We're not making any changes to that?
Correct, and that was actually the impetus for us looking at single families a little bit differently.
Yeah.
We've had a kind of a long stance of, we like fully sprinklered fire buildings, but we're becoming more flexible in our thinking, and we think the value of sprinklers in any structure is valuable. So we're kind of looked at that language and applying that to single family, but that is still in effect.
I'm interested in applying that to single family. I like that. Great, thanks.
Ms. Kritzer.
Just one more clarification on the sprinkler system. So the piece that's under fire sprinkler systems within commercial, is the change that you're making is mostly to clarify the difference for the benefit of the residential piece, or did anything substantially change in terms of the actual commercial code?
No substantial change there at all. Okay. The language that is currently in the code and that we're proposing for the code has always been there. It was just in one section higher in that code section, and so it applied to both residential and commercial. We just moved it directly into the commercial language instead.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Other questions from council? Mr. Carson.
Just a comment. I'm happy to see this. I think that it's the right thing to do, and Todd and I had a conversation yesterday about it, and it really was the commercial that we wanted it to apply to. I think it just residential just kind of got snagged in its net. So anyway, thank you for working on getting this kind of in the right, having the right impact that we really wanted, and not having it kind of snag other things along that we'd like people to improve their property. We'd like them to, be thoughtful about design and some of the things that people want to do to keep their house up. So, thank you.
Other questions from council? I have two questions for you, if they don't have any. One is, just if you can clarify, you said that there's a fire separation. If you could be more specific about that, is that drywall?
Yes, it's basically a drywall.
Okay.
And I believe in the residential code, it's a 1 hour separation.
Okay, that's fantastic. I actually really appreciate that change as well. And then thank you for the detail on that. One other question for the council. There was questions about question marks, and that was from the past item. Is that correct? Would you be willing to, if there are corrections or other, I'm assuming there's no additions or changes from the council to what's been proposed as of right now. We've sussed that out. So I think the answer to your question about a study session is no study session. A thumbs up on no study session. Okay. Yes, we have no bananas. Great. So we will not have a study session on this. However, it is scheduled for the 16th. So if there's any other questions or if you have changes or updates, would you be willing to bring that forward through to Ms. Stewart's committee ahead of time, just so we get a glance at that before it goes? Okay, awesome. And that's coming with another code package, is what I understood.
Correct. We're trying to bring it forth on the 16th with the building division.
With everything else. Okay, perfect. Is there anything in the way for this to go earlier?
No.
Okay. So it'll be your choice. Great. Fantastic. With that, no other questions on this item? This is okay for consent? We got thumbs up on that.
Thank you.
And I will thank you all for council for that great conversation. I will be excusing myself from this item, which is the award of bid to Granite Construction of Everett, Washington for the 10,000 Avondale Erosion Control Project. I'm not sure who from Public Works is doing this, but I'm going to hand the gavel to Ms. Stewart because I have a financial conflict of interest to declare. So I will excuse myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Anderson. We have Aaron Noble on the line to help us with item number 4. We'll give Councilmember Anderson just a moment to clear the room.
Thank you. See you all later. Oops, I took yours. Thank you.
All right, Aaron, are you with us?
I am, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead and introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to let us crash let Public Works crash the Public Safety Committee meeting. Like in the title, so we'd like to approval to award the construction contract to Granite Construction in the amount of $2,036,000 for the 10,000 Avondale Erosion Control Project. Their low bid was about $411,000 higher than what our funding allowed. And so part of this, we're requesting authorization to use additional unallocated funds from transportation and stormwater. It's about $206,000 from transportation and $205,000 from stormwater. The funding is currently in the CIP, but it's unallocated. I believe in transportation, it's from impact fees, and stormwater was from savings to other projects.
Thank you. And before I turn to my colleagues with their questions, I just want to clarify the ask of council. The requested action is to be determined in the agenda. The packet does say that the award of the bid must occur within 45 days. So is requested action simply as soon as possible, or do you have a more precise sense of that?
We're requesting to go on to the consent agenda for the May 2nd, council meeting.
Okay, great. Are there questions from the council? Council Vice President Kritzer.
Well, you answered my question around where the funding would come for the additional fees that is, or cost that it will be. I do think, I'll just say, although it's disappointing the project is coming in higher than we expected, I've gone and looked at that site, and you can see where it's eroding, and it's coming right up to where Avondale is. And I think it's both an important project for the health of the road and the community, but also the rerouting that's hopefully going to happen. It's also going to be great for salmon recovery. So it's a win-win in my book. So I am happy to support moving this along. I think it seems like it's a pretty urgent project to get done. So.
Council President Forsyth.
Thank you. Noticed that some of the funding for this came from King County for the funding, and I was wondering if there's any opportunity for us to go back and ask them if there are additional funding sources available, since it is a pretty big difference in the cost.
Mm-hmm. We did go back to King County twice. The original grant was for $1.1 million, and they originally increased it to $1.55 million. And then we kind of went back from the second time and got another opportunity grant for an additional $27,000. And I believe that was the last funding that they were able to provide.
Was that recently, or?
Yeah, it wasn't very long ago, no.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Mr. Carson.
I would just make the point, I've also seen it. It is, I mean, obviously we talked about this during the budget, and it was all very highly ranked. And I don't think we can risk not doing this project. And it's, I think it's a higher price because it's maybe a little bit more difficult than maybe even we figured during, and obviously it's just going to get worse. So putting it off doesn't work for me either. So I mean, I don't love paying more than we budgeted, but at the same time, we can't afford not to do it.
I appreciate that, Mr. Carson. And thank you, Mr. Noble, for your response to Council President Forsyth, that you all have done your due diligence and gone back to every source a couple of times here. So Council, is there any opposition to having this item on consent on May 2nd? I think we are good to go. Thank you so much, Mr. Noble.
Great, thank you.
And with no further items, this meeting is adjourned.